All right, light it
Hi,
up.
everyone. This is Norman Kochenek here for Eyes on Sports or Eyes on Cricket. We're here today on a topic that's actually come to me from someone outside of my immediate cricket circle, but to a friendship circle which extends to Mission Vijay in Southern California, Orange County region in the US
Just,
of A.
just
I
say
have,
California. Just say
uh,
California.
okay, just California. I have none other than a man who's been on before with his wife, Julie. I have Jim Farbaniec. How are you, Jim?
Good, good.
Now, I've brought Jim on today because actually Jim has been a leading force in this. The topic, of course, is headed as Australia's darkest moment or darkest hour. I'm effectively in the dark, so I've set the scene appropriately for this video that I'm in the dark, being the darkest hour or
Well,
darkest
I,
moment.
I'm the one. I'm the one that brought this up, not
Yeah,
you.
Jim Farbaniec would totally when I brought it up. An American interested in what we would call the worst form of sportsmanship, as we better know known in Australia as the underarm incident from 1981. That's 44 plus years ago. In February, in fact, of 1981, where Australia played New Zealand, and in fact that led to the then captain Greg Chappell taking on what was basically the worst form of responsibility as a leader of the team
So,
to get
so
his
what?
younger.
So why don't you just walk everybody through what happened?
I will. It's okay. It was the last wicket to come in for New Zealand. New Zealand needed some 6 runs to win
No, no,
with
just
one
a
back,
tie. Just a tie.
or just a tie, in fact, correct.
Yeah, yeah.
So they needed six
I
runs to
just
tie.
watched
So
the video.
it was virtually unlikely that it would happen under any circumstances, no matter what the bowler bowled for that last ball or last over. It wouldn't have mattered what type of delivery. It just so happened to be the younger brother of the Chappell brothers, Trevor Chappell. His captain for the day was his older brother or his middle older brother, Greg Chappell. Handed him the ball to then bowl those deliveries. In fact, to bowl the last ball is in fact a underarm delivery, not overarm. It was unfortunately within the rules at the time to bowl the last ball as a total along the ground underarm delivery, which gave virtually no chance for the New Zealand team batter to actually hit the ball off the ground at all, having no hope of going anywhere near a six, which only would have allowed a tie. And when that
So,
happened, Rod Marsh was the wicketkeeper. Rod Marsh very openly said, you can see it on film, he was saying the words no, 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 and Greg instructed Trevor to do so. Deliberated over it, had time to think about it. It was a pre planned moment. It wasn't something on the spur of the moment, in a heated moment. It was well thought out and instructed that his younger brother, Trevor Chappell, bowl an underarm delivery, which allowed the batter basically to do nothing but hit the ball back and had no run and therefore lost the match. That
so
was the
the
scene.
the concept is what other moments in sports history have been a worse display of sportsmanship, and there are very few. There's some that maybe compare, but like to not give your opponent a chance. Like you could look at soccer, you dribble the ball and you waste time, but like this was such a deliberate act that it's hard to compare this to other sports moments. And then
Now,
to your point, Norm, most Australians don't want to talk about this because it is such a black eye on sportsmanship. And it's not about Australia and it's not to belittle the brothers that did it, but it's the heat of the moment when they did do it. And it's something that needs to be recognized.
absolutely. And what is very interesting, everyone, we have Jim Farbanic from California in America, generically not a well-known country for follow cricket. Having said that, though, America now is number two as the largest following of cricket in the world because of the expats that live in America. But it's interesting to get a perspective on something that happened 44 years ago, and not just in terms of cricket, but in terms of any sport. The most unsportsmanlike, darkest moment that could ever have happened has actually happened in cricket.
And then what? And why don't you explain like why people in Australia don't want to talk about it?
In particular, those of that vintage, I must say, it's very much that vintage. It's we normally in Australia we suffer from tall poppy syndrome. We're quite happy to take down our top sportsmen and ridicule them, but this was more than just ridiculing a player. This was, first of all, having a go at one of our captains at the time. Also, the embarrassment of Australia being looked down upon for something that really brought cricket into disrepute, and also Australia's unsportsmanlike manner brought us into question. We, over the years, have basically put it under the carpet. You do hear the Chapel brothers talk about it, but very rarely, and it's best left unsaid. And even the players that played with Greg Chappell in that era, including Rod Marsh, who's now passed, your Lenny Pascoes, your Jeff Thompsons, your Doug Walters, even his older brother Ian, probably wouldn't come out and talk about it very readily. I'm sure if Ian Chappell did talk about it, he would be very scathing of it. But they would probably cloak or cover the incident by saying it was the rules at the time, and the rules at the time have
But
been
how would you
allowed.
compare? How would you compare this to like the recent scandal of like
Sandpaper game.
sandpaper in the glove?
It probably is way more significant, way more deliberate.
Yeah.
In the case of the more recent incident, the captain was Steve Smith, and he did not orchestrate the whole thing. Dave Warner did, and got Cameron Bancroft to bring out the sandpaper and to alter the ball. The bowling unit was against it, as was the keeper back during the time of Greg Chappell. It was given a lot more curry this time, a lot more negative discussion, more open negative discussion about this incident, and they were actually punished for it. Steve Smith
Yeah.
and Dave
Well,
Warner and Cameron Bancroft were actually banned from international cricket for a period of time.
what would be most interesting is if you could get the brothers on to hear it from their point of view. And this isn't to blame anybody. Like everybody has made mistakes in their life. Everybody has made a bad decision when they're playing a sport. But this is probably the epitome of the worst decision that you can make. So it would be interesting to hear the brothers talk about it together.
Right. We'll see what we can do there. Now, Greg Chappell has spoken about it on occasions. So has Trevor. I've seen them live at an audience-based discussion. The questions that are fired at them are generally fairly guarded, fairly not defensive, but fairly within a boundary of acceptance. They're not really scathing of the individuals to their face. Whether they should be or not is a question to be asked. To ask them whether they
It
are
is it
embarrassed.
is interesting like why they haven't been, because it is such a black eye for not just Australia, but just like sports in general. Like it's hard to find some other equivalent to this incident.
I mean, the only thing that I can readily think of, well, first and foremost, it was 1981. It's now 2025. Most of the younger generation would not have seen it or would not have necessarily have seen it,
Right.
and would not be brought to their attention. The sandpaper gate incident or sandpaper incident that we had recently in South Africa, relatively recently, was well and truly dealt with publicly after, with the guys crying, lots of public embarrassments. First of all, denying it, and then admitting to it, and then allowing that to all pan out, and then being banned from playing. They got a certain amount of sentencing that occurred, and you could argue karma and also appreciation from the public that they served their time. Most people actually think they didn't deserve to send them out like that and spend so much time away from the game as they did. So they became a bit sympathetic for them, which is hilarious. But we go back to that Greg Chappell with Trevor Chappell in particular, the underarm incident, as it's called. They were not punished in any way, shape, or form. There was no punishment delved out. There was no points taken away or time away from cricket. It was dealt with, and they said within the rules at the time. Embarrassing as it was, Richie Benno, one of our most famous captains, was the commentator, as Jim pointed out to me earlier, and he openly at that moment said that was the darkest moment in cricket, and he was right. He was very damning at the time that happened. And look, if you look at the players on the field, Rod Marsh, who was the wicketkeeper behind the stumps, was totally against it. Most of the team were
Well,
definitely against it.
the brother that bowled, he didn't want to do it.
Of course not.
You could
Well, what do
watch
you do, Jim?
his
What do you
body
do?
language. He didn't want to do it,
What do you
but he
do when it's
still,
your older
did
brother?
it. But he still did it.
What's your thoughts if that's your older brother who's the captain of Australia, which is virtually the prime minister of Australia,
I
telling
mean,
you,
it's hard to say. Like you could always Monday morning quarterback and say, I would have done this, I would have done that. But in the moment, like if your older brother who you look up to and love and care about says, do this, you'd probably do it. But
and
then
that's exactly what happened.
you're not thinking about the consequences. And then the older brother that told you to do it probably in the moment isn't thinking about the consequences, but he still gave the order. It's a very public, documented order that was given, and it was bad. And
Well,
then
and
I
not
mean,
having
it's one of the worst displays of sportsmanship that has probably ever been recorded.
so from your perspective, being American, Jim, delve into that somewhat more. You have a love of cricket now because of, I guess, initially the contact with me, but you love all sports. You would not accept that under any circumstances in any sport category.
No, like if somebody did that and you're playing against them, you would lose all respect for them. You wouldn't even you wouldn't come away from that saying like, oh, we tried our best and we just lost. You would feel so hard done by that, like there would be little to no respect for that team, which is the whole point of you playing, to have this camaraderie and respect playing a sport. And then they took that away. They took that
Now,
away from New Zealand, which was that's what was disgraceful. Like they took away the joy of the sport and the camaraderie and the sportsmanship, which is that's what was disgraceful about this whole thing. And like you can compare it to US sports, you could say like Tom Brady underinflated the footballs, and then there's soccer, like they flop and whatnot, but like this was something so deliberate, and they didn't even they were even if they hit a six, they only would have tied. They wouldn't even have won.
what about
So
the ice skating incident, the Olympic ice skaters?
I mean that's like criminal. I mean that's like
Yeah, yeah.
Nancy Kerrigan and Tanya Harding. I mean uh that was a criminal act, but like this is in the moment of playing a game, and then I think the deliberate action of taking away a piece of the joy and the piece of the competitiveness and the competition is very rare in any sport. Like it's not common that you can take away the opportunity to compete. I think that's the key is they
Yeah.
took away, and maybe not consciously, but they subconsciously or consciously took away the opportunity for New Zealand to compete, which is a travesty because you play any sport, you always want the opportunity to compete and win. And they took that away from them, which is, you know, sad beyond anything. You could call it disgraceful, you could call it a travesty, but it's just really sad that they made that decision.
Yeah, that's brilliant discussion, Jim. And in fact, it's very insightful because it's something that we have definitely put under the rug, under the carpet in Australia over time. We do bring it up occasionally, but generally with a dismissive attitude. The incident that happened more recently, where they had the sandpaper involvement, was given a lot more publicity, a lot more damning publicity, a lot more attempt to ridicule the players involved. They were subsequently banned for a period of time. Cameron Bancroft was never played again. The man who actually had the sandpaper in his pocket. Um, they have we have run with that quite heavily and quite openly. And in the end, the coach Darren Lehman, the James Sutherland, the head of Cricket Australia, a whole bunch of people fell out over time because of this incident. Actually, Steve Smith's captaincy was under
Yeah.
question. He's been captain. He's back as captain now, by the way, which is intriguing.
And then I think why this is different than the sandpaper incident is it's not like steroids. It's not like you're taking some drug to be better. Like this was everybody's playing the game and then you took it away from the other team. I think that's
In unnecessary action, yeah, as you said.
unnecessarily or necessary. I mean, yeah, I think the fact that there wasn't like you were taking a drug or doing sandpaper to be better, that's bad. But
I mean, there
all
have been
things
incidents.
equal, and then you take it away from somebody to compete. Like there's a difference. Like you're taking a drug or you're doing sandpaper to make yourself better. That's one thing, but you're still competing. When you bowl on the ground, when the best they can do is tie, and you take that away from them, that's almost worse.
And it's very true. And as I said to you, and Australians who are listening, in fact, the world of cricket would probably agree, we we have certainly kept it under the carpet quite a bit, and Australians don't like to bring it up, don't like to talk about that particular incident. We don't like to rubbish our captain generally ever, and people will always argue it was within the rules. He was allowed to do it. He did it. It
Yeah,
doesn't make it
it's not
sportsmanlike.
about everybody if you watch it, like it was wrong and it was beyond wrong. So it's not about Australia, it's not about defending the captain. I think it's interesting to look at this as like a display of sportsmanship and lack of.
Oh, I mean, I don't doubt what you're saying at all. It is extremely bad, and the enjoyment that I've got with, if you can call it enjoyment, is that we're getting a perspective that we would not normally get. If I were to talk to most other countries, people from countries of the world, and we should also include New Zealand here, they will have a bent on it which will be quite scathing. Australians will admit to it, but not talk about it. But an American, or for that matter, other parts of the world which are non-cricket nations traditionally, their point of view is extremely important because that's a perception of a sport, our sport, being Australians, that we don't want to have. And it maybe it needs to be revisited. Maybe there needs to be more of an apology
Yeah,
given.
maybe there is a reconciliation of, I mean, everybody recognizing that this was a travesty and like it should never happen again. But also, too, I think it's just an interesting conversation of like what you should not do in a sport, and you should always compete.
Agree.
I mean,
The,
I
the,
think that's the core of it. It's like never take away your opponent's joy and opportunity to compete. And I think that's the rare instance of this situation where that's what happened. Like they took away the joy of competition and that opportunity to play the game, basically.
well, Richie Benno again was the commentator then, Jim, and he was a very noble man, a very honest and very, kept the laws of cricket correct and above board and very sportsmanlike. he was immediately extremely damning when it happened on air. The point is, though, Australia's got a bit of a history in sport, not nearly as bad as this, of being a little bit cheeky with their way. They take advantage of a law that they can exploit. It has happened before, but not as overtly as this. We have, of course, another incident that happened within India called a mancad. The man was actually called mancad, where he pretended to ball the delivery, balked at bowling it, turned around, hit the stumps, and the man had been run out at the non-striker's end. Somewhat similar, but not nearly as damning. That's become known as the mancad. This has not become known as the underarm ball that will be bowled in the future. It's been stopped effectively.
Yeah.
But
So I think the interesting thing about this is like the next chapter, if anybody wants to come on and talk about this or debate it with you or me, I think that's the interesting thing is like it's open for discussion where it's been forgotten or nearly forgotten, but there's still things to learn from this. And maybe it is the brothers are still learning from this.
I think they are. I mean, Trevor Chappell, I think it truly, really affected him. Greg
Sure.
Chappell
How
probably
can it not?
Greg Chappell not as much, but the pivotal person out of the three brothers that played for Australia is elder brother Ian. He was not on the field on that day. He was not the captain. He was not a part of the team. And yes, your cat. We need to get your cat's perspective. Puss, 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 puss.
Max wants to chime in.
I'm sure Max does. The reality is that Ian Chappell, who was the strongest, I would argue, the three brothers, being the eldest, was a great captain when he captained Australia prior to Greg, and would not have put up with this. He would not have allowed this to happen. He would not have even thought about it. I'm pretty sure. Rod
Well,
Marsh,
that's
who
the
was the
interesting thing about it is like you don't know. You don't know until you're in that
I'm pretty
situation.
sure Ian Chappell's character spells out pretty. He might be a bit non-committal with discussion on television, but generally, he's somebody of integrity. Would not have done it. The issue is that I'm in the dark more than ever. The fact is that that would be an intriguing, and I will try to invite Ian, Greg, and/or Trevor onto the show. We were going to get David Graveney, who I told you about earlier. David, of course, being an incredibly astute English
You know, it would be
selector
interesting.
player.
You get Ian, Greg, and Trevor all on the same show to talk about it.
Well, they do those things live in front of audiences, and the Chappell
No,
Foundation, which is
this is just for Australia and the cricket community.
well, it won't be just for Australia because viewers of this channel go well beyond Australia. I can assure you, Jim. They're
Yeah.
in all parts of the world. But David Graveney's perspective and perhaps the New Zealand perspective as well. We can revisit
Yeah.
this, but I'm going to conduct it on the basis of your conducting, Jim, because you have the independent nature. Not only are you not Australian or New Zealand, you are also American, but you're also a non-cricket nation by tradition, even though now cricket is
Right.
big there. I think you'd be in the right perspective to really be able to bring out a very good perspective. So we will look towards doing this. We could almost call this part one of
I
a
think this is
series of.
part one of part 4.
Well, that if we get to part four, that'll be a doozy. Part four. I'm looking for. We're going to bring. We might on part four. We might bring the female perspective because
We're
I tell you
bringing the
what.
whole family together, all the brothers and their children, and we're going to say how it impacted the children, the grandchildren. Everybody's coming together. Reconciliation, redemption, or shame. One of the three.
I tell you what, women's cricket, which is probably the purest form of cricket you'll ever see, they would not put up with it. And even from a cat's perspective, would you not sleep during the show? Thank you very much. How dare you fall asleep? That's disgraceful. I want
Cats
your cat.
care.
Does your
Cats
cat have a
care.
YouTube ownership or YouTube membership? I want
Not
your cat
yet.
to subscribe. Well, now they're gonna
Who's going
get
to
the
be on
paw
it?
into the screen. What's
All
your
right.
cat's name again?
We can't, Max, we can't. So we can't go any farther than 25 minutes. So we've got to wrap it up. Part 1 is
All right.
almost done, and then part 2 is coming up.
So part 1 finishes with the travesty of the underarm incidents, Australia's darkest moment.
What do we have to learn? What do we have
We have a
to
lot to learn.
reflect on?
We need to be able to talk more deeply to those responsible and those who observed it from both the English, New Zealand, Australian perspective, and obviously
And it's not to blame.
monitored by a few.
It's not to blame people, but it's just to explore.
Well, that's going to be the that's going to take great facilitation skills on your part to not lay blame to anyone.
That's right. That's
All right,
right.
thanks everyone. That's been fantastic. Jim Farbaniec, our resident Californian cricket expert, also has taken some great catches in the gully when in Sydney some years ago. It was
Long time
fantastic to see.
ago.
Yeah, it was a fantastic gully catch, probably equal to a Matthew Hayden style catch.
I don't know about that.
Oh, I know it.
That was
But
a
I'm
good
in the dark.
catch, but
That was great. It was one of the most memorable catches I've ever seen, especially from someone who does not play cricket readily.
that's right. That's
Okay,
right.
we're going to sign off now. We're going to get Jim back, David Graveney, and a whole host of other people. Adam Hollyoak, I might try and get as well, well known as English captain on his own fit. We'd love to be able to be a part of this. So, and I should get Chris Vernon, a host of people.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
Let's,
it's a deep dive into not necessarily the act, but the concept of the act.
and it will. This will be part 1 of let's say a 4-part series.
That's right.
And from the darkness of Sydney, Australia, to the bright lights of California, stay tuned on Eyes on Cricket with Norman Constantine, Eyes on Sports. We'll bring chapters, or part at least 2, 3, 4 into the future. Let's see how we go. Take care,
All
guys.
right.
See you all soon. Stay on, Jim, while I end the call.
Take care.